So during this video, I'm just going to be talking about place value in the junior school and some of the concepts and language that we look at with our children. So I guess one of the main concepts that we look at with the children is them being able to identify whole numbers, and that includes being able to name numbers, being able to write numbers in both digit form and word form, but also being able to read numbers and identify the different columns that we use within the place value system and what they mean and how they also work with one another. So I guess in the junior school we'd be looking at, can they identify and name numbers in the ones, particularly in the lower junior school, and then we work our way up to the tens, the hundreds, the thousands, and what that would look like. When working with place value in the junior years, we use a lot of concrete materials, such as we might use bundles of popsicle sticks, or we could even use beads, or one of the concrete materials that we often use are MAB blocks, and these are a really good representation of what whole numbers look like. Which then leads us into further down the track in the upper junior school would be trading. And what that means is if we were to have some ones or units, okay, if we had 10 units in the ones column, okay, what would happen if we had more than 10 units, okay, and what that would look like if we were to trade up into the tens. And using that key language, so of trading. We also would look at what it looks like for students to work with numbers when they're grouping numbers together, when they're rearranging or partitioning numbers. So that would be another concept that we would work with the juniors as well. And as they got older, or as they were more able, we would move up the place value line into our thousands, our tens of thousands, and our hundreds of thousands. So it's a lot of concrete materials, and there are plenty of materials that you can use at home to work with place value, and even using a place value mat for students to get comfortable with what whole numbers look like. How to write using words and digits in place value, but also, which then leads on to adding and subtracting whole numbers and regrouping them accordingly. So now I'm going to give you an example as to how we could use this number to identify the numbers using the whole numbers within the place value system. So we'd be asking the questions to students about what each of these numbers represent. So looking at the place value system, we'd be reviewing this is the ones column, the tens column, and the hundreds column. So we'd be asking, what does this number in the ones column represent? And we could even use our materials for the child to show us. So we would expect that the child would be identifying the number in the ones column to be a 3. Okay, so 3 units, okay, and we would ask, okay, what would that look like if we were to show this using our materials, okay? So we'd be looking to get our MAB blocks, talking about how, once again, these are our units, okay, and we'd be looking for 3 of these, okay? Great. Okay, then we'd move over to our tens column, and we'd be asking the question of what does this number in the middle represent, and give them an opportunity to identify what column the number is in the place value system, and we can see it's in the tens. And asking those questions, we can see that there's a 5 there, but I know that this is 5 tens, okay? So using those materials, again, I can see that these, the long blocks represent 10. So if I had 5 of these, what is this equivalent to, okay? And we'd be looking for students to be able to identify that this 5 here is the same as or equivalent to 5 tens, which is 50, okay? So they might have 50 here, all right? And we'd move those over to represent the 50, which is the 5 tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, 4, 5. All right, then we'd move over to the hundreds column, and we would be asking, what does this 2 represent in the hundreds column? Okay, and then we could even refer back to the MAB blocks, how many units are in each of these yellow blocks, and then we would be hoping that they would be able to identify that 200s is the same as 200. Okay, so if we were to use our blocks, we could bring that across. Here we go. All right, to represent our 200. Now, depending on the student's understanding of place value, we can actually bring this all together Another material that's quite useful when doing this are the place value arrows that we use within the classroom, where we can actually then start talking about how we've partitioned our numbers, and we could even look at adding an and or an addition symbol here, right? And talking about how we know that 200 plus 50 plus 3 is the same as 253. Okay, and we've shown that using our MAB blocks. And there's lots of questioning that you can do around this scenario here. I might even go further and say, what would happen if I actually added another 10 to my 50? What has that changed the number to? Where would I change my number on my ones family place value chart? And we'd be hoping for students to be able to identify that if I'm adding a tens into the tens column, that it would then be increased by 10. So we'd be able to change that to 60. And you can also go the other way. I might say, what would happen if I actually took away one of the units? So how would I change my ones family place value mat? And what would this now look like? And you're hoping that they're applying that to see that this would now be 2, okay? And how would that then change my answer? So the overarching message that we would be sending home is that it's important that children understand within the place value system that every digit in each column has a specific value. So the ones being the units, tens, hundreds, all the way up to millions with some students in the seniors. So it's important that they understand that every digit has a specific value within the place value system.